Hello guys and gals, me Mudahar, and today I wanted to do a little rant time kind of deal. I wanted to cover something that's been on my mind, and something that people have asked me but I've never really talked about for a while. Is just the legitimacy of like esports in general. Now the reason I'm bringing this up to attention is recently while I was at work outside, I do some sports gigs on the side basically to make a little bit of extra cash. But the thing is as I was speaking to a lot of people that I was working with, I went on a topic of electronic sports, esports, whatever you want to call it. Basically, League of Legends, Counter-Strike, the streams that a lot of people like to watch. And the overwhelming response was that people really didn't think that it counted as a real sport, and that it wasn't going to be as amazing or something blown up to the levels of, say, football, American football, cricket, hockey, ice hockey, baseball, things like that. Now, I'm not here to disagree. It'll probably never reach those stages, but I didn't like the fact that a lot of people in the business, or at least, really thought esports was just this little tiny niche thing when it really isn't. Now, for those of you who don't know esports is the competitive play of many of our favorite video games that are really popular, not just on YouTube, but on sites like Twitch where they're primarily played, such as League of Legends, of course, Dota 2, Counter-Strike, Rainbow Six Siege, many competitive type games like that. And this spreads not just on PC, but even on the consoles. You'll see tournaments for, say, Halo 5 Guardians, or Gears of War 4, or vice versa on any dominant PlayStation shooter, right? You'll even see Call of Duty thrown up into its giant events spread across the world, and many of them hosted by Activision themselves. Now, my history with esports is rather interesting. I've always really been a follower of esports, but just a follower when, to be honest, I had the time to watch it. I don't really have the time to watch many of these games just because of the sheer length of it, and just because I can't really set aside time, just because I am incredibly fucking busy. But I try to do it the best I can to watch some Counter-Strike, some Rainbow Six Siege, maybe some MOBAs. But my history comes across the fact that back when I was a kid, we had channels such as G4 or Tech TV or whatever you want to call it. That channel's defunct now. But back then, MLG used to actually run a televised show of a lot of teams such as, Straight Rippin' and whatnot, and they would basically play Halo 2. And that was how I got into esports myself. I know that every day I would always tune in to watch Halo 2 being played, even though me and my brother, who watched with me, never had an Xbox at the time, and we surely didn't even play Halo 2 until, much after the fact when we did get an original Xbox. When I watched that show, it was more exciting to me than any other show I could watch, and I come from a family that watches a lot of sports heavily. A lot of my family watch cricket, a game that I personally could never get into. I mean, I can sit and watch, but I wouldn't be into it as much as I was a kid watching Halo 2 being played competitively on a professional, circuit. And ever since then, I always followed Halo on a competitive scale. I saw a bunch of Halo 2 games. I followed Halo 3 heavily as much as I could back then when this sort of digital streaming thing was in its infancy, right? But I would follow as much as I could. And eventually I petered off and I did other things. I played a lot of single-player stuff, and I just didn't have the time or patience to really watch it. Back then, streaming wasn't as simple as going on Twitch TV. Back then, you had to go on, Justin TV, things like that. Weird sites, Ustream or whatever. Well, they're not weird, but the thing is, the entire practice of streaming video game footage was almost new at the time. Hell, even uploading gameplay videos was relatively new at the time. So this whole thing was in its infancy, and it never caught on when I was really into the viewing demographic of these websites. But recently, as I was working in the biz, I met a lot of people who just didn't really find it legit to begin with. And a lot of these people were a little older, they had a different mindset, and a lot of people still think video games are a very childish thing, which they're certainly not. Roger Ebert once said that video games, never were going to be fucking art, right? But how wrong of a statement was that? Because in video games, we have games such as Last of Us, BioShock Infinite, we have tons of amazing games. Grand Theft Auto 5, very artistically driven games, I guess I could say. I mean, artistic in the sense that they are fucking masterpieces in visual and storytelling splendor, but the thing is that statement was false, and so is the statement that video games cannot qualify as a sport. A sport, at the very core, is competitive, showmanship between two teams on a certain on a certain game, a certain set of rules. I mean, to me, a game of Counter-Strike played competitively between two teams, such as FaZe or Optic, is as legit as, say, the Super Bowl. Because at the end of the day, it's two talented teams playing against each other on a game that, on just what, is a set of rules, really? To me, I like esports a little bit more because esports to me have always really been more dynamic. Now, maybe that's because I'm not really into sports in general. Like, I don't really sit down and watch a game of sports and whatnot. I mean, I could, but I don't. The thing is, with games like Counter-Strike, with games like Rainbow Six Siege, and I mention Siege a lot because that's one of the games that I'm personally invested into at this point in time, alongside Counter-Strike, is that there is a certain level of dynamic play in these games that I feel isn't captured in just conventional sport. There are so many things to learn, so many things that get tweaked on these battlegrounds that almost every season of esports, you see something new emerge. You see maps getting changed slightly. You see plays getting changed slightly. Sometimes these games have entirely new gameplay elements thrown in that, again, don't break the balance, but they change the way you're viewing the sport. They change the way some of these professional players who, you know, are really, really spending their hours learning these games showcase on a grand public scale. The point I'm trying to make here is that esports to me has always been a more dynamic, you know, a more dynamic thing to watch. You watch a game of Rainbow Six Siege, you know, people are going to be breaching walls left and right. A year later from then on, you're going to see people playing on new competitive maps. You're going to see people playing new entire operators that change the entire face of the game. I mean, just looking at Siege right now, from its core base game, has already seen so many changes that, frankly, watching a game now is going to be substantially different from watching a game, say, a year ago. And that's where I think this stuff shines. But to me, personally, what kind of gets to me is the fact that people don't look at it in a serious fashion. Like, people don't really see the value of it, which there is a lot of. And when I say value, I'm talking about money entirely. Now, this might sound weird to you, why am I putting money into the mix? Is because as a person that works in the business, money means everything at the end of the day. You know, it's kind of great to see a lot of these esports players earn comparative salaries to, say, physical sport playing counterparts, and a lot of people can feel salty about that, but the thing is in this society, if you're making people a lot of money, you're going to get a lot of money in return out of it, okay? If you're making millions of dollars for your bosses, they're going to be compensating you in a proper world relatively similar to how much you're making them, and that's where I can see the value of esports. There are channels in parts of the world, Asia specifically, where League of Legends is the only thing that runs on there. This is important to them. In some parts of the world, for example, in South Korea, you know, MOBAs are a big thing. You know, StarCraft is a big, StarCraft and shit, that stuff gets televised. You know, there are TV stations now, such as ESPN, that years ago mocked the whole thing. They were like, you know, they didn't really notice the value of playing these games competitively and how many people are lined up to watch them. But when you see the success of many of these streams take over Twitch, I mean, when you see a League of Legends final going on Twitch, hundreds of thousands of people tune into that, and that's not just Twitch. Remember, this thing is not only streamed to one place, it's streamed everywhere else. You got people from all over the world lined up to watch a video game being played by professional individuals who treat this incredibly seriously, who learn these plays, who go hardcore into playing the game in a new way, creating new memes, I guess you could say, out of this entire game, and essentially inciting people to play the game that way, learn new tricks and whatnot, and ultimately, it's one of those things that keeps people coming back more and more and more. There are people who would never play these games, but still line up to watch these streams or these shows, due to the fact that the core content that's being given to you is just interesting, that it kind of sucks up anybody that's willing to be sucked in. Now you got television stations over here deciding the fact that because it's such a growing thing, that they've got to start televising these things. They've got to start really treating it seriously, because it's not just a childish thing anymore. You know, video game streams, esports in general, has become this giant emerging market, which I hope a lot of these companies start taking incredibly seriously, because it should be taken seriously. And I kind of get a little triggered. I guess you could say that this is basically me being triggered at the end of the day. Esports would not be as popular as they were. It wouldn't be taking over Twitch servers. It wouldn't be taking over YouTube gaming if it didn't have value to it intentionally. You know, whatever you might think of it, whether you think it's a real sport or not, isn't really up to debate, okay? It's, you know, in the world where you can fucking say poker is an actual sport, you know, a game that I probably played drunk out of my ass numerous times, if you're going to call that a legitimate sport, you might as well call people playing Counter-Strike a legitimate sport, or people playing Dota 2 a legitimate sport, because it's just as well, it's just as legit as I would say a game of hockey or a game of football, or, you know, American football would really be. And ultimately, that's really all I have to say about it too. I just wanted to get this whole thing out there. I feel like this emerging market should kind of be treated a little bit more seriously, because at the end of the day, it has so many similarities, and it's such a valuable piece to, like, say, even the entertainment industry too, because when you looked at Counter-Strike, for example, even during the whole skins epidemic, when, you know, there was a whole, like, third-party, you know, gambling, betting, and whatnot, there was hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars even, of Counter-Strike skins being traded on these teams, being gambled on these teams that were playing these games, such as FaZe Clan, Optic, Virtus, Astralis, all these teams basically playing against each other, and people would, I've bet gun skins on that too. Everyone really has. My brother bet hundreds of dollars worth of gun skins on it. It's one of those things that attract a lot of people. And it's one of those things that has a true fucking place in the economy anyways. And I think people need to start kind of treating it a little bit seriously. I know I've been a little bit all over the place, and a lot of this is personally charged, but that's because it's one of those things that I've been getting into, and I figured I might as well make a video on it because it is important to me, and I just want to see it kind of emerge more alongside with just being treated with a little more seriousness to it. I mean, whether you think video games are art, that's all a subjective thing. You know, at the end of the day, you can't claim one thing or another, but one thing that I do want to help come across in this video is the value of some of these things as well. There's a lot of debate that goes on about whether esports are real or not, and they are real. They are very valuable, and I just wanted to bring that message across. You know, I wanted to really bring some examples across and show you all that it is a legitimate thing, and that, frankly, you know, I hope to see it flourish. And as always, I do want to start that dialogue. I do want to get that little bit of a debate, because that's what rant times are about. So let me know what you think about esports in general. Do you think they're, you know, bullshit? Do you think they're not? I think personally they have just as much of a right to exist, and I think in a way it's almost running in parallel with some of the major sports that we have nowadays. Surely it'll never be as big, just because gaming will never be as big as actually, you know, kicking a ball around, but it's getting there, and I just wanted to know everyone's thoughts on it too. So let me know in the comments below what you really think about the subject. This has been another episode of Rant Time. Let me know what you think about the format, a little bit more personal, I feel. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like or dislike it, I am out.